We have prided this show for a very long time on talking to anyone, anywhere, at any time. We have those conversations every week here on KCMO Talk Radio. Whether it's with Mayor Lucas on his Thursday morning spots, Laura Kelly, the governor of Kansas, is a regular on this show. So we think these are the conversations that need to be had to solve the issues that we have, not just around Kansas City, but in the country. And I'm happy to welcome on and say good morning to Nick Wright. This town knows him very well from his time here as a sports talk radio host. And now he's doing big things on First Things First. He was there on Wednesday during the parade. He was back in town. And obviously, you know, it's an emotional week for all of Kansas City. It's an emotional time. And everyone's got different opinions on how to go about solving the issues that we have, not just here in Kansas City, but across America. And Nick put out an emotional video during his show yesterday. And listen, it was well produced. And as I put on Twitter, I said, Nick Wright's a smart guy. He's a talented sports host. But I think he's lost on this, especially when he notes that it's our fault what happened on Wednesday. So I want to give Nick Wright the floor right now here on KCMO Talk Radio to talk about this and much more. And Nick, good morning. We appreciate your time. And I guess my first question would be here on this. Why is it your fault, my fault, or any of our listeners' faults what happened on Wednesday in this town?
Because we're adults, and it's our first and foremost job to create a safe environment for our children, and we're failing them. But that's also not what you wrote on Twitter, Pete, and I understand you hope you have more listeners than you have Twitter followers, so I'm going to help them just in case they didn't see it. You said what I had a major self-own by talking about the shooting in Highland Park, Chicago, because Chicago has strict gun laws. And that, of course, you're a smart enough guy to understand, is totally irrelevant to the point because Chicago, much like Kansas City, sits on a state line. And the state right across from it, Indiana, has no gun laws similar to Missouri, so the guns come from there. Where I live, New York City, has very strict gun laws and is one of the safest big cities in the world, much less the United States, because the surrounding states do not have such gun laws. But you know that, I would assume, or you wouldn't be engaged in the discussion. You also then said I was just being applauded by a bunch of sheep and I wasn't making a cogent argument, and that what I said was nonsensical and all over the map. And so I understand you then said you don't want to get into some debate. But I assume you also don't want to get into just petty name calling. So I will then ask you, what did I say that was nonsensical? What was not cogent? And what was all over the map? And do you still think pointing out that gun violence can happen in any city in America, but is more likely to happen in cities with easy access to guns that are not on state lines, do you still think that is a self-own?
Absolutely, because Missouri, as you note, has state laws. And why is it, Nick, that we're sitting here in Kansas City and St. Louis and Columbia, yet if you go to some of the other counties in this state, in fact, most of the counties, 95% of the counties with the same gun laws do not have nearly the same levels of violent crime that we're seeing here in Kansas City under the same exact laws that you're ragging on.
Well, yes, of course, there's, yes, Pete, it is, of course, cities with mass amounts of population are always, across all of world history, going to have more of everything, including violence, including that. So, okay, if you're
no, but it's a ratio. Based on a per population basis. I'm not talking about just pure numbers. I'm talking on a per population level of violent crime. It's not close outstate.
Yes, of course, of course. And
why? Of course.
And we can get into the. Say it again.
I said, why? Of course. Why is that assumed?
Why is it assumed that a city where you have a more diverse array of need, where you have a more diverse array of income, where you have more things to be taken, where you have all of that, where there would be more violent crime? And by the way, also, that is not necessarily true across the board, as we know that on a per capita basis, in major portions of the Deep South, the most violent areas are some of the smallest areas. But I'm not actually trying to get into, if you want to have a macro what is the cause of crime in America discussion, I suppose we could have it. I'm probably, and we are probably not the two human beings most apt to have it. But I would like to know, if you don't think this is on us, who do you think it's on?
I think it's on, Nick, and I don't think this is controversial or difficult. Two juveniles who show up to a Chiefs parade with 1 million people.
Yes, of course.
With weapons that can kill dozens in seconds. Yes.
Hey, I got a question for you, Pete. Do you talk about fentanyl on the show ever?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's at fault for the fentanyl epidemic?
Well, Nick, here's what I'm trying. Here's
No. It was so easy. You're right. Of course, it's the kids who shot up the parade who are directly at fault, and everyone understands that. But the reason you had to pause and stammer is because your listeners know that on your show, when you talk about any issue related to public safety other than this one, all of a sudden, your IQ gets 100 points higher. You recognize, yes, there is the first level issues, and then there are the bigger issues that contribute to it. Mm-hmm. And I know on your show, you have no problem holding government actors to account for issues that they were not the ones.
But Nick, what's the answer? What's the answer to the question that you want to hear? I guess that's what that's what I want to ask you. What's the answer when it comes to fentanyl? Fentanyl. I'm looking at the reason I pause is I look at the border. I look at the drug dealers who are pushing the fentanyl. Yes. I'm looking at a lot of people. It's not as simple when someone shoots somebody up.
Why can you not do that same thing with guns, buddy? Why?
Because someone taking fentanyl, Nick, is not knowingly taking fentanyl. They're not knowingly killing themselves. People who are pushing drugs with fentanyl in it, majority of the time, they know where they're getting it from, and they know what's in it. In large part, we know that from local law enforcement. So it's a very different conversation.
So with fentanyl, your blame pie ends at the drug dealers. It doesn't go above them. It's the drug dealers are the
well, no, I mean, no. I can go back to China where it's being produced. We can talk to the Mexican government, which is allowing the drug dealers to, of course, filter it into this country. I mean, right?
Of course. We can talk to our government and all of that.
Yeah.
So why the hell won't you have that same conversation about gun violence, Pete? Why?
Okay, here's why, Nick.
Do you understand the cognitive dissonance?
No. I will answer that. And to me, it's not a difficult question to answer because 99.9% of people who are buying firearms in this country are not doing it to commit crimes. Nobody who is pushing fentanyl is doing it out of the goodness of their heart or for anything positive.
Right.
Anything. That's the difference.
Right. And so I will take issue with your 99.9%.
Okay, fine. It's 99.8, whatever.
Okay, well, listen, I'm not certain that if we're talking about someone is buying single shot hunting rifle, I would agree it's probably close to 100%. When we're talking about people buying, manufacturing, and selling modified semi-automatic weapons, I'm not quite certain they are 99.9% are used for non-nefarious purposes, but set that aside. The question I am asking you, Pete, is if I am not allowed to say it is a bigger problem than two kids who shot up the parade, then what is your idea on how we don't just have this be the world we must all live in?
I'm glad. Yes, I'm very glad. I'm very glad we're getting to this point. Nick Wright, by the way, is joining us. First things first, longtime sports talk host in this town. You're getting exactly into where I want to go. You know this town. You grew up here. You're from here. You're buddies with the mayor. I get all that, and that's great. So right now, Nick, We have a problem in this community, as you know, record homicides last year. And if you ask any person in law enforcement, who I know you interacted with a lot, and you do when you're here in town, they will tell you that they arrest the same criminals time after time after time. This is not that big of a town compared to especially New York where you are now. These cops, they know the gangs. They know who these people are. And they have a tough time getting them off the streets for good. And those are the guys, you know as well as I do, who are getting these guns into the hands of these juveniles. And that is a major problem that needs to be addressed here in Kansas City.
Okay, so I didn't quite get an answer, but what you're, I think, saying is maybe stricter either mandatory minimums or bail laws or multiple offenders, multiple strikes thing. You know what I mean?
Just take the criminals and throw the damn book at them, man. I mean, this isn't hard.
Okay, got it. Yep. Yeah. Of course it's not hard. So do you agree that Kansas City is not unique in its epidemic of gun violence?
Compared to who?
I mean, compared to, I don't know, that there are at least 10 major cities in America dealing with similar levels. Throughout my whole life living in Kansas City, we were always somewhere between like 4 and 8 on homicide rate. Like it's tragic. It's been an issue my entire life. It's not as if point I'm trying to make is Kansas City is not an outlier amongst, some major American cities. Of course. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're on the same page there. There are differences in state laws, municipal laws across a lot of these places that are dealing with this. What is the common thread, Pete? What is it? Because you know it and I know it. It is, and why does New York City not have it? Why? Can I tell you why, Pete? Because even the most hardened criminals, when they know that you can be, to use an analogy from my world 17 years ago or 15 years ago, the most famous wide receiver on the most famous football team in New York City. And if you get caught with a gun, not committing any crime, not hurting anyone, instead accidentally shooting yourself, you're facing a 5-year minimum, right? You cannot have it. And so you want stricter laws. The question I'm asking you is, are you willing to discuss whether or not that the easy access and the unfettered access that the state of Missouri has fought in court to keep, even against what necessarily local law enforcement would like to do, is part of the problem here?
Nick, I think that we are sitting in a city and in a state that, yes, has looser gun laws than New York. That's indisputable. But also, you talk to anyone in law enforcement in this town, and they will tell you if we did a better job enforcing and prosecuting the laws on the books, we would be a much safer community today. You're bringing up a macro issue, and you noted this. We're bringing up a macro issue on gun control in this country. But to tie it back to what happened in this town on Wednesday, we have 2 juveniles who broke the law already. Two juveniles.
Yes, of course. And it is very, very easy if we want to treat. Listen, I get it. When it is, it's about, these 2, bad acting kids and their own choices. And when it's a different type of mass shooting, the one that was, this was a mass shooting in definition. It was not a mass shooting in the way most people think of them, because it wasn't, one guy with a rifle indiscriminately spraying a crowd. It doesn't make it less tragic, but I understand those, while both are mass shootings, they feel differently, they land differently. And when it's one of those, what we talk about is mental health. And what we talk about is, you know what I mean? Oh my gosh, this, lost sheep, this evil child, or where are the parents, all of it. And what I am trying to really ask you is, because I scrolled through your, so I haven't listened to your show. I shouldn't say obviously, it sounds insulting, but I have not listened to your show this week. But I scrolled through your tweets, And your tweets are not the entirety of your opinions. I understand that since this incident happened. And what I want to know from you, because I understand you don't want to anger your audience, but I don't think you actually agree with your audience on a lot of this. Are you willing to concede the point that no matter what resources we give law enforcement, no matter if what we do as far as, keeping criminals in jail, all that stuff, that unless we seriously address the easy, unfettered access to firearms, this is an inevitability? And do you think we should seriously address and change the easy access to firearms, particularly weapons of war? That's my question.
Well, the weapons of war thing, I mean, come on, Nick. That's just a phrase that means nothing. But to your point, no.
Lightweight semi-automatic rifles. Does that phrase mean something to you?
Yes, but once again, what's the purpose that we have no information on the gun that was found with these kids yet? We've seen photos on social media, and that's it.
I do. There were 5 guns. 2 of them were lightweight semi-automatic rifles. I believe they are. If I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So let's say that's completely accurate. I haven't heard that from KCPD yet, but if that's what you've got, that's great. It doesn't change the fact that the same access that you are complaining about in Kansas City is also available in Lee Summit, Independence, and St. Joe, and they don't have these problems.
Okay.
So now you're getting into a macro issue and a different conversation.
No, Pete, no, Pete. But here's the thing: everywhere has these problems eventually. The day-to-day crime. I get it that you wanna blame this on quote gang. And again, the incident at the parade is the micro. I am now talking macro. You wanna blame this on gangbangers, and you want to paint a very vivid picture for your audience without specifically saying what you're whistling. And you want to say, why doesn't this happen in Leawood? Who lives in Leawood? What are the fathers like in Leawood? I get it. You want to be able to
Nick,
drill
you
down
have
so your
not
audience can
you
afford-
have
no,
you
no, you have not answered my question. Do you think on the macro level, from federal to state, we have a responsibility to our generation of children that have to go through mass shooting and active shooter drills, which is not because the school is afraid that some local gangbanger is going to come there and shoot it up? Do you think we should make fundamental changes or keep going at status quo? That's my question, Pete.
And if you give me the law, that prevents a combination of the parade on Wednesday and, as you noted,
it doesn't exist.
Okay,
doesn't exist.
So you're admitting
the single law that prevents all the single law that prevents all possible gun violence. That one doesn't exist. But the idea that because there is not a single law panacea, that we throw our hands up and just say, nope, we'll just continue to live in the one civilized country, I shouldn't say civilized, the one developed country in the world that is not in the midst of an active war, that people have to deal with this. It is so intellectually cowardly. Pete,
no, Nick, you are proving my point. You're proving my point, as you and many others have done, which is to use what happened on Wednesday and to admit there's not a law that fixes it, but then just bring it right to the national conversation on what the best way to solve gun mass shootings is. That's what you're doing, and that's fine. You're allowed to do that, but just admit it's disingenuous, and you're using a tragedy in this town because you're using a tragedy in this town to then further a narrative federally that you're allowed to have, but that you're admitting has nothing to do with what just took place in Kansas City.
It absolutely has something to do with what took place in Kansas City. The fact that a couple 16-year-old kids easily could access semi-automatic rifles is the conversation, Pete. Now, the fact that it was not a lone wolf shooter who's spraying the crowd, I get that then allows you to just bang on gang violence. I get that. But to miss the bigger picture here, if when the door popped off the Boeing jet a month ago, that was just about the bolts on that plane. But really, it was about what is all the processes that led up to it, whether or not they're doing proper safety checks, whether or not they're cutting corners. And on every other issue, people such as yourself have no problem looking at the micro and then expanding to bigger questions. On this one, what you do is you throw your hands in the air, say that criminal deserves to rot in jail, we love our local law enforcement, and move on. And so what you have refused to do, Pete, this entire time is directly answer my question. Are you okay with the status quo? Are you?
Nick, it's a ridiculous question, and you know it. It's a completely. Nick, do I want to have fear of sending a child to school and being afraid of a mass shooting incident? Of course. But you are giving because guess what? The solutions that you have, there's no evidence to back up that they will work. We have seen mass shootings. No, can I wait? Hold on, Nick. Can I? You've been yelling at me for 20 minutes. Can we speak like adults here for 5 seconds? Wait. We have seen mass shootings in blue states, in red states. We have seen them across the political board on a state-by-state basis, right?
Yeah,
you admit that.
But we have, but it's not a state issue. It's a United States issue, which is why, despite the fact that and I really appreciate you saying I'm allowed, but despite the fact that you being so irritated by the fact that I would dare talk about the biggest issues at hand here. It is a singular issue to this country. Singular. Now, if you want to pull up the fact, well, actually, there was a mass shooting in Norway. Yes, of course. There are single incidents, but there is not an epidemic of incidents.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am, again, you said something interesting there. You don't want kids to have to go through active shooter drills. Do you? So I will ask you, because it's not an unfair question. I'll answer it on the front end myself first. I absolutely am willing to forego some of my most extreme alleged Second Amendment rights in order to not have school children from the moment they're in first grade have to have part of the curriculum. Here's what we do if a shooter comes
I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to answer the question. Yeah, I absolutely would. Here's the thing, Nick. I absolutely would do that. I agree with you. I need evidence and proof that it would do anything to prevent it. I will give you that. I will do it. And I will absolutely.
How can we provide that evidence? So here's what I would argue, Pete, because that is a nice kind of swift turn of phrase there, which is, yes, I'll do it, but I need the evidence. And of course, we're not able, aside from, of course,
of course. So then it's just emotion. Then it's just emotion.
No, wait, hold on. Wait, what do you mean it's just emotion?
You're admitting that you do not have the data.
Of course we have massive data from the rest of the world. But out of curiosity to you, and then I'll finish my point, how would we get that data that you would then be okay with? What is the industry standard sample and size you would need, and how would we get it? You're saying you want the data.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying this is a real world problem. So in the world according to Pete Mundo, how would we get that data? What's the process? What is it? Tell me.
Well, I know what you're going to do, by the way. You're just going to compare us to other countries. And comparing countries, you're a worldly guy, and you know that America is much more diverse and complex than Norway. But go ahead and do it. Just go ahead. I know. Floor is yours.
No. I'm not. No, the floor is not mine. I'm not going to compare us to other countries. And again, we're not much more diverse than a lot of places. Yes, we are more diverse than Norway. And I just use Norway because they did have a mass shooting.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm asking you. You said you'd be fine with it if you were presented the data.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now asking you, what is the context in which that data can be generated? Right? You're saying you need the study done, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And I am asking you, in what context can that study be done? How can we provide you the data? What needs to be done?
Perfect. I'm glad you asked. State by state is a great way to look at a micro level of the data. And to bring it back to my earlier point, regardless of the state, these issues have existed. And we live in a country with 300 million people and 300 million guns in circulation. And I'm waiting for you to still give me the thing that protects us at the parade, protects us at the school, and makes us all feel safe with our kids. And I, in 25 minutes, haven't gotten that.
Yeah, I mean, because I thought it was so obvious that individual citizens should not be allowed to possess these types of weapons. That's the answer. And if they, oh my goodness, what about, protecting ourselves against, tyrannical government? Guys, as great radio host Laszlo in Kansas City said 20 years ago, the alleged tyrannical government has nukes. So unless you're going to advocate that we should also be able to have Harrier jets and suitcase nukes of our own, if the government wants us, they're going to get us. So set that part aside. I'm very clear on what I want. I admit that I am probably further extreme than a lot of people. That's fine. But we can have the discussion. But you told me you would be with me if you could be presented with the data. And then you said that, well, the data is what we already have, which is state by state, which in a country where you have free access between states, where it is one giant country and the states are territorial boundaries, but no real boundaries other than tax boundaries, that is, of course, meaningless. So I am very curious. It sounds to me like what you're saying, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, I apologize. Please correct me. That you're just fine with this. That there is that is
BS, Nick. This is where the argument goes. If you don't want to do what I do, you're okay with kids getting shot, as if it's an absolute black and white conversation. And I get it. That's how sports talk radio and sports talk media goes. But for those who want to be adults, which is how you started the conversation, that's not how adults talk when they want to actually talk through issues.
No. How adults talk about this issue is very, very simple. The people who want to do something about it are passionate, angry, and will at least suggest some possible solutions. And the people who want to do nothing about it, even if deep down they agree, which I think you are, out of fear of alienating your audience, will say, life in America. What can you do?
Nick, you keep tying it back to the federal issue. And I get it. You mentioned earlier in the conversation that's what you want to do, and you want to use Kansas City to do that, and what happened on Wednesday. In this town, we had 9. You look at in this town, we had 9 times the amount of homicides as Sandy Hook, which was part of your point in your monologue the other day. 9 times in this town in 1 year. Are you telling me that if you could get all these, or at least the majority of these criminals off the streets before they commit these heinous acts of violence through things like being proactive on the police side, prosecuting guys with pettier crimes before they get to the point of killing people, would you be willing and open to do that?
Yeah, Pete.
Okay.
I am. Okay. Hold on.
That's good.
I actually support law enforcement in this regard. I mean, you know what law enforcement would love more than anything? It's when they pull someone over for speeding or show up at a DV call, they are not terrified that that person is legally, openly, wantonly carrying a weapon bigger than theirs. That's what they would like. But of course, the folks pushing on the other side of this support law enforcement if in their mind law enforcement means rounding up gang members and throwing the book at them, but does not support them at all if it means making their jobs actually safer, if it means actually making their day-to-days actually safer. And if you seem right now to be, in my opinion, conflating what is a tragically common, nationwide, city by city, gang-related, usually drug trade-related violence amongst gang members versus the picture I am talking about, which, yes, is the bigger picture of the scale of weapons that those gang members can have and that anyone can have, and the random damage it can cause. Because the perpetrators in this instance appear to have been gang members and juveniles, all of that, it is giving you, in my opinion, an easy out. And you accusing me of using Kansas City as if this is some lifelong, I have been trying to grab up the guns my entire life. Give me a break, man. I've been on TV for 7 years. I was on the radio in Kansas City for 5, in Houston for 4. This is not my go-to topic. But when it is so patently obvious that you can be at a parade with 800 uniformed police, with many other undercover police, and in 20 seconds, 2 kids can, or maybe more, that the details on that I understand, at least 2 kids can shoot 24 people because they easily could get those types of weapons, and you don't want to acknowledge that that is as much of a root cause of tragedy in America as anything is unfathomable to me. Unfathomable. And this is my hometown. And I did not grow up in Overland Park my dad was the president of the Firefighters Union for 30 damn years. I lived in the city limits of Kansas City every day of my childhood, then came back after college and did it again. I'm very well aware of the gun violence epidemic we have in this city. I'm very well aware of the gang problems we have in my hometown. I'm very well aware of all of it. And while I raise my voice because I'm passionate and angry and heartbroken, I, as an adult, am able to hold 2 ideas in my head at the same time. That, yes, we need to look at why Kansas City, St. Louis, and Baltimore, why these places have uniquely terrible gang violence problems. We also need to be able to have the conversation of why these cities and every city in America, save a few really, anyone and everyone that wants a semi-automatic rifle can get one. And whether or not that is not only making us more dangerous, but the point I was making on television yesterday that you called not cogent and nonsensical was the psychological damage it's done to our kids. That our kids have to, you know what they call it in Connecticut where my kids...
Okay, I've let you go on for 5... Nick, I've let you just ramble for 5 minutes, all right? I get it. I understand how you feel. I appreciate the passion. Nick Wright, by the way, first things first, Fox Sports is on KCMO. I'm trying to piece this all together and develop my own thoughts based on what you're saying.
Piece together?
And well, I just listened to you talk for 5 minutes, and it went in 17 directions. I don't know. I'm trying to have a conversation, and you just want to talk, and that's fine. But you don't need you got a much bigger platform than me, man. You don't need my platform to talk. So do you want to converse, or you just want to yell on the radio? Because that's all you're doing.
So, Pete, maybe this would have gone in a different direction.
I started it very disarming. I mean, I started it saying, "Hey, let's have a conversation," and then you just wanted to yell, and I gave you 40 minutes to just yell on the radio.
Pete, to be honest, let's be honest.
Yeah.
You started it dishonestly, which is you read your tweet where you called me smart and talented, and then you just decided not to tell your audience the other things you said, which is what you generated the call. So you started it with, I would say, a true staple of your particular.
Well, I wanted to go blow by blow, Nick. I wanted to say, hey, why is it our fault? Then we'll go from there. And then you spun it back on me, which, whatever, that's cool. But, like, I was not being dishonest. I literally read my own tweet. There's nothing dishonest about that.
Yeah. So here is the reason I think this, in your opinion, is gone off the rails. I don't think so.
Okay.
Is because I'm yet to hear from you a direct answer to the question I've been asking. And so I'll ask it one more time. We are obviously not going to be able to do a nationwide study without fundamentally changing nationwide laws, right?
Nick, here's what you've done, and it's very smart, and you're really good at this, and I respect the hell out of you for that. But what you've done is you've corrupted the conversation. And instead of me asking you, how you want to solve this, what exact law you want to put into place, and you've screamed you screamed about semi-automatics and firearms, but you haven't done anything more than that, and that's fine. You're allowed to do that, but you have not provided any specifics, and then you've spun the whole thing on me, which, once again, is really brilliant. Great job. Great job. And the other thing you've admitted on this show, Nick, is that you're admitting this conversation does nothing to prevent Wednesday. And
no, I have not admitted that, because Wednesday, the number of people shot is almost assuredly far lower, if not for the style and caliber of weapons used. I have not admitted that.
Mm-hmm.
I admitted that none of this can prevent all crime, that there will always be crime. And if you want to dog whistle to your audience that
now you've done nothing but insist I'm dog whistling and all that. I mean, listen,
Pete, it's obvious.
It's really not. Just because you say it's obvious, just like everything you said the last 40 minutes, it's not obvious, Nick. Nothing you've said is obvious. Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing you've said is obvious. I have asked you like 3 questions in 40 minutes, and the rest is you screaming at the radio and yelling on KCMO, which is cool. That's fine. But I don't get it. Did you want to have a conversation, or did you just want to yell? Because you don't need my platform. You started the conversation by taking a dig at me by saying that you've got this huge platform, and good for you. I'm happy for you. I love capitalism. I love America. But you started this conversation by saying you don't need this platform, but then you've proceeded to use 40 minutes to rant.
Okay. So to be clear, I asked to come on, so I clearly wanted the platform. I was not trying to take a dig. I know what you're referring to when I said you have more listeners and Twitter followers. I was not trying to be like, you don't have them in Twitter. It maybe came across that way. That it was not my intention. My point is, you have a lot. What I was trying to say is, you have a lot of people listening. I know this is a popular show, and you're not like you market it as a radio show, which is smart, I believe, actually, rather than like a social media enterprise. And so I was just trying to inform the audience of the other things you tweeted. I promise I was not trying to be like, you don't have enough Twitter followers.
Yeah, I mean, because
that's ridiculous.
Listen,
but I do want to know, and this is the thing, you can say whatever you've said about me, that's fine. I think you agree that the study you're looking for is, under these current laws, impossible to actually do. So, given the actual reality that we live in, you're just okay with the status quo, correct?
No, I'm not okay with the status quo.
Okay. Okay, good. Now there's
No. Listen,
so what are we going to do?
I have blown through 3 breaks, Nick. I'm not okay with the status quo. But here's what you are pinning. You are trying to make this where if I don't agree with you on changing the federal gun laws, I'm okay with kids getting shot in classrooms. And that's disingenuous. That's frankly complete bull. And I've given you 40 minutes, and that's ridiculous to come to that conclusion.
Okay, that's fine. What would you do? What would you do, Pete?
I would have, what? You may not remember when this happened, Nick, but the feds came to Kansas City in 2020. It was called Operation Legend. They got hundreds of guns and hundreds of criminals off the streets across Kansas City, and there was an immediate downtick in crime the back half of that year. And that's not dog whistling. That's not me saying anything about anyone's race. That is a fact, Nick, and that would be a great place to start.
I remember it.
I would be a great place to start.
So I'm just because you said I haven't let you talk, and I know you've blown through breaks, and I'll shut up after this, but I really, really do want to know, what would you do so our kids don't have to do the active shooter drills? Because that's where I almost cried on TV yesterday. I'm just very curious, because you said if you could be presented with definitive data, but we know that data can only exist if we said, hey, for the next 10 years, let's try doing it the other way. But you don't. So what would you do so our kids don't have to go through active shooter drills?
I think a lot of that's going on right now in schools around this country, and that is security around our schools when it comes to door. You and I aren't that far apart in age. I could walk in and out of any high school door I wanted to. I remember sneaking out, getting lunch, whatever. You have now much tighter security around these schools. They are no longer the soft targets that they were. It doesn't mean it can't happen again, but it means preventative measures are being taken all over the country to try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Do you think that there is a psychological toll on kids from turning their schools having the same security that you would have at a federal courthouse or a prison or something like that? Or do you think that is just the cost of doing business in America?
I'm not a psychologist. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question.
Give it your
and here's the thing. If you let me ask you this. Would you because I have data on crime to look at and analyze. I can't analyze brains of kids. I don't have any data with brains of kids. I have criminal data in front of me.
Plenty of data on that. Believe it or not, Pete, there's plenty of data and studies on that. You just maybe aren't
Okay, well, okay, fine. I don't have it. Nick, here's what I would say when it comes to that. And can you guarantee me that the laws you want to pass would create a safe place for schools where a school shooting would never happen again?
That it would never happen again? Of course not. That it would happen far, far less often? Of course. Yes, I could. 100%.
Okay. Well,
you know it.
No, I don't know it because I don't know that. I don't. And let me ask you this. If your gun laws were put in place, would you be fine sending your kid into a school that had no security?
I send my kid to a school right now, there's no security.
Okay. So you would be okay with that?
New York City, and they're not out of their mind.
There's not a single ounce. I'm not to get personal. Yeah. You're telling me that your kid's school in New York City doesn't have an ounce of security?
I'm telling you that my kid, I don't want to say his name. There's a guy at the front door who you check in with. There's no weapons in the school. There's no guards in the school. Yeah, because we don't have to live like this, buddy.
There's a guard at the school. There's someone at the school. You can't just willy-nilly walk in. Just so I'm clear.
Yeah, he's dressed like a teacher. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's Pete. Listen, I don't know what radio building you work at. The one I used to work at in Kansas City, Intercom. There was an older lady named Pat at the front desk that had to buzz you in and that you checked in with. Yeah. I did not consider her security. Mm-hmm. There's a front desk person, and you have to be buzzed into the school, or buzzed into the office. That, I don't know what's your the idea that receptionists. Yeah.
But I mean, these buildings are locked, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure. Okay.
What is that?
Listen.
What are you talking about?
I mean, I'm just making sure that there's some level of security. That's it.
What are you talking about, man?
I'm just talking about what you brought up, which is school safety. That's it, man. Listen, we've done 45 minutes. You know how this works. I've blown through more breaks than my producer cares to admit, and I'm going to get yelled at. So I'm grateful for the time. Yeah. I'll say that much, and I do appreciate you coming on.
Okay. Thanks for actually letting me come on, and I think the audience has a very, very clear idea whether they agree or disagree with where I stand, and they know that you feel like, I don't know, man, what can you do? So, yeah, it was good talk.
Yeah. All right. Nick Wright on KCMO Talk Radio. Short in substance, long in wind, I guess. Might be the best way to put it. 913-408-7957. You know, I used to do sports talk, and I guess I realize how much I don't miss it. Because in sports talk, the louder you yell, the more right you are perceived to be. And with what we do, that ain't how it goes. We actually like to have adult conversations, not like, you know, teenage kids screaming about whether or not you should have pulled the pitcher in the seventh inning. Listen, I was more than fair.